Hello, I am the Script Doctor and welcome to the channel. Usually it is Mondays that people dread, but for me it's Thursdays, because that's when a new episode of Star Trek Discovery airs, and my morbid sense of curiosity compels me to turn it on and see if this time we'll get something close to a Star Trek show, or will we get some visual and narrative equivalent to a word salad. So far, we're 3 for 3 of What the Hell Is This? Let's see if it turns 4 with this week's episode, Forget-Me-Not. We open with a medical officer's log, which threw me for a second because I thought Dr. Culber was the chief medical officer, so should his log not state Chief Medical Officer's log like all the others before and after him?
Chief Medical Officer's Log, Stardate 41512.9. Chief Medical Officer's Log, Stardate 44161.2. Chief Medical Officer's Log, Personal, Stardate 46830.1.
His log is rather peculiar. He comments on how the crew is having difficulty coming to terms with their time displacement, but refers to jumping over birthdays, graduations, anniversaries, and funerals. Except, those days don't change. What they represent doesn't change with the passage of time. The concept of those days, specifically birthdays, is of remembrance and permanence. One's birthday will always be one's birthday. If you were born on February 8th, 1979, it will still be your birthday on February 8th, 2906. You may be dead by that year, but to you and those that remember you or honor you, it is still your birthday as it is for countless other people throughout time. So I'm not seeing an honest conflict with this premise. I'm also not seeing an honest assessment of the crew. He refers to them as overachievers. I'm going to need some evidence on that claim, Doctor. An overachiever performs their duties better and finds more success than expected. From what I've seen of this season so far, only half of that definition is true, and it's the more success than expected part. Remember, this is the crew that doesn't know physics of matter, gravity, or friction, doesn't know how to hold a weapon, doesn't know how to use tricorders when ship sensors are down, dicks around with wall decorations instead of performing the tasks assigned, and makes no effort to learn as much about Earth and this new time after establishing relations. These aren't overachievers. This is a crew that personifies the Dunning-Kruger effect. It's proved with the following line by Culber.
When we find the Federation.
That's great. Put all your faith in something that may or may not exist as you expect it to. Have the Federation solve your problems. Don't try to do it yourself. That's a horrible behavior to have for your heroes. We like heroes because they take action. People don't want to watch or read stories about characters waiting to be saved by someone else. We are more invested with the characters that do the saving. For Discovery, all their hopes lie in Adira. Literally, she has a Trill symbiont that has memories they can use to find the new Federation headquarters. It is a miracle that she hasn't died trying to host the symbiont. We saw what it did to Riker in the Next Generation episode The Host, but I'm perfectly fine treating this as a rare abnormality. They conduct a scan on Adira to learn more about her and the symbiont.
A reminder that we are, and always will be, connected to something greater than ourselves.
Stop the footage. What is that? Is that supposed to be a scan of Adira? First, the scale is off. Not to body shame, but Adira is not that thin. If this is supposed to be a 23rd century scan, it should fit the same measurements of the subject. This looks like a scan of that blonde woman on the bridge, not this kid below. Second, that symbiont is huge, and based on its position in this image, its tail is, well, to put it politely, hanging out of one of Adira's exit ports by the look of things. Adira reveals that she doesn't remember how she got the symbiont or much before that. She woke up in an escape pod a year prior. Now, we know from the previous episode that Senna Tull died 2 years ago as told to us by Shortstack.
Admiral Tull was on Earth, but he died on an outbound ship 2 years ago.
So we have a mystery year in addition to lost memories for Adira. Culber presents 2 options. The first is exploratory brain surgery.
Bad.
Or taking her to Trill as they have more knowledge on the symbiont and could help unlock her memories. The crew present some doubt as to the state of Trill. It's not unreasonable to question how they will behave given what they experienced with Earth, but these are Starfleet officers. Such a thought should not deter them from trying. Self-doubt, as what we're seeing here, is not really a quality of an overachiever, now is it, Dr. Culber? The tactical officer, who appears to have the strangest form of dyslexia I have ever seen, informs the crew that Trill appears to have no planetary weapons. They open a channel to the Trill where a representative named Voss, no, not that Voss, this Voss, greets the Discovery and is pleased to learn of a host and symbiont returning home. Before we get underway with that part of the mission, we have a very compartmentalized subplot regarding Stamets and his spore jumps. Saru is concerned that he is the only one on board who can make the jumps, and with dilithium in short supply, he has reservations about how there aren't any other means to use the drive if Stamets is incapacitated or worse, dead. Stamets argues that he's been searching for an alternative for nearly a decade before finding the tardigrade, and other options have not proved viable.
There has been 932 years of technological advancement.
Really, Saru? I mean, sure, we've seen stronger weapons, shields, and faster transporters, but we have not seen any alternatives to warp travel in this time period. We don't even know what the Romulans or Borg are up to in this time. And even if there was advancement, the Discovery just left Earth, a planet where they could have learned and possibly upgraded their tech to solve this very problem.
You and Innocent Tilly are two of the finest minds on this ship. I have every confidence you will find a solution.
Well, they're screwed. Tilly suggests using dark matter energy to enter the Spore domain, and Stamets dismisses the idea as nonsense. Which it is, but no more nonsense than traveling instantly through space-time via mushrooms. Dr. Culber visits Burnham and suggests that she take Adira to the surface because her problem isn't medical but emotional. Of course, who better to handle that than a human woman who was raised by emotionless, logic-minded Vulcans? Culber argues that Burnham is undergoing some form of post-traumatic growth. What he ends up defining are survival instincts. When we face challenges, we either adapt to survive or succumb to them. Apparently, Burnham is still in the process of that change, and Culber thinks it's a good idea for her to help Adira, who is just beginning that journey. But Dr. Culber has gone through that journey. He has died and returned. By his own measure, he's more qualified to be with Adira than Burnham. Let's just face reality. Dr. Culber doesn't want to spend time with a 16-year-old girl and is pawning her off on Burnham, which is a shame because this could have been a much-needed Culber episode. Like the rest of the crew, Culber hasn't been given anything on his own to really do, and this was a great opportunity. Also, it would have played into the surrogate parent angle that they started with Stamets last episode. But we can't have other characters form a bond on Discovery. To do so would make this a Star Trek show, and who wants that? Burnham refuses the call to adventure, claiming that she knows what the crew needs from her but can't give it to him. Nor does she actually tell us what it is the crew needs, because from my vantage point, I don't see her serving any purpose at all. Culber refers to her having a flaw of being a responsibility hoarder. If that's the case, then this is a perfect opportunity to work on that flaw by having Culber head down to the surface with Adira, and Burnham can go back to playing with her light bright puzzle. I move this here, I move this here, nothing changes, I move this here. I wonder if this thing has bubble blast. After their moment together, Adira asks the same questions I posed.
I'm sorry, I just don't get why you're going with me.
Yep, the show's slowly starting to become self-aware. Don't tell the writers, they may get upset that fiction is passing them on cognitive development. Burnham compares Adira waking up with no memories to her waking up with no past. Hold on, what the hell is she talking about, no past? You have a past, Burnham. You know it very well. You haven't suffered amnesia. You're not in any way able to relate to Adira's issue, granted neither was Culber. But this is not a compelling argument to make Adira and the audience more comfortable with this change of plan. Traveling to the future does not negate your past or the time you came from. If anything, she should be arguing how she's been in a fish-out-of-water situation like Adira, in a strange new world and time, with lots of confusion, lots of doubt, and no one to trust or guide them. She should be saying that Adira is lucky that Discovery is here to help her out in this situation. Even if it is also unfamiliar to them, at least they're together, and if there's one thing that Starfleet is known for, it's exploring the unknown. But instead they go with the I have no past concept. The two take a shuttlecraft to Trill. Wait, why are they taking a shuttlecraft? Can't they beam down? Or have the secret hideout writing team not learned of the evolution of Trills that took place in the series Deep Space Nine? If they did research, was it only watching the host? Are they trying to roll back the things that DS9 did with the Trill species? If so, they kind of botched that by having Adira transport on Discovery with the inspection team last week. Burnham and Adira proceed to the surface via shuttle, and Culber reports to Saru that the crew is physically sound, but Saru points out that they are not healthy. Apparently, stress levels are off the charts, and the crew is a ticking time bomb on the edge of detonating. Culber claims it is uncharted territory. No, it isn't. These are Starfleet officers. They've been trained for extended missions. In order for them to graduate Starfleet Academy, they would have to endure isolation training and psychological evaluations to ensure that they are fit for space travel and be reliable officers. These are basic parameters extrapolated from NASA during the moon landing days. Plus, it's not like they're in a ship the size of an elevator car. They're on this massive ship, 88 officers on a ship designed for a crew of over 130. They have ample space and privacy as well as options for social events. They have also only been in this new time for a few days, so how could they not treat this as they would any other exploratory mission? The conflict that is being presented is that the crew doesn't feel connected to anything, and that is a really good conflict to have. But we're being told that conflict by Klober and Saru instead of seeing it firsthand with the crew. If you want to give us something that we can understand through empathy as to why the crew is unhinged or stressed out, you have to do something that hits them personally. As a writer, you have to show your audience that impact. What we needed was a moment of acclamation. Perhaps Captain Shortstack provided the Discovery crew with Earth's history and public details during their time away. Reading such information and history could have a trying effect on the crew. Some may have difficulty coming to terms with learning what happened to their relatives and descendants over the last 900 plus years. Perhaps there were crew members that had spouses on Earth that remarried and had families, or had children that grew up without them, and it's hitting hard with what they missed. We only got a taste of that from Tilly last episode, but it was so empty because it was left as a mystery. It wasn't resolved, and when they got to Earth, they hugged a tree instead of seeking out the answers to the questions that were important to them. This idea of disconnection is a good one, but the handling comes across as, well, casual, as though the writers never dealt with loss or absence. I don't expect it to be something we see in every crew member, but give me at least one dealing with something heavy that can sell me the idea that this is happening with the rest of the crew. The stuff with Detmer is so distant and we get zero private time with her that she's ineffectual in representing that. On Trill, Burnham presents Adira to the Trill Council, and while one of the representatives, Guardian Z, is amazed and pleased to see a symbiont and host return from abroad, the others find Adira's existence as an affront to their values. No symbiont has successfully merged with a non-Trill host, and instead of seeing this as either an abnormality or a miracle, one council member finds it an abomination. This doesn't sit well with Z, who feels that there may be something they can learn from this miracle to help their species thrive once again. I am a little confused, but my understanding was that any Trill could become a host. It was only the ones that excelled and earned the privilege that became hosts. There were mental disciplines that needed to be learned in order to sort out the memories of the symbiont and be able to balance the host with the Trill and recognize the distinctions. I guess the writers forgot that part in their crash course in Trills, as Z claims there aren't any viable hosts. I'm sorry, but for me as a Star Trek fan, I need to know what they mean by viable and how that relates to what we learned about the Trills from Deep Space Nine. From this scene, it is my understanding that there are plenty of symbionts, but not many hosts. Now, if that were reversed, then we would have a better conflict. Perhaps the Trills would want to remove the symbiote so it could mate and produce more and expand the species to get things the way they were before the burn. Perhaps the Trill Society has gone the last 100 years without joining so as to allow the symbiotes to replenish their losses, and the symbiont in Adira could aid in those efforts. I'm not opposed to a conflict in Star Trek addressing bigotry. It's been done before, but that episode also addressed war and self-annihilation as a result of that bigotry. Why can't we get something that goes beyond that idea as well today? I think there could have been a great conflict between the Discovery crew and the Trills. The Discovery crew needs the memories to find the Federation, and the Trills need the symbiont back to repopulate the species. With Adira caught in the middle, you have a nice dichotomy here. If only. While the Trill appear to be upset, except for Z, they will not forcibly separate the host from the symbiont and ask Adira and Burnham to leave. They are escorted away, but Burnham notices that they aren't headed for their shuttlecraft, and one of the Trill tips their hand by exposing his position with a Trill weapon. Voss demands the symbiont back, and Burnham strikes and phasers the attackers.
That wasn't Federation protocol.
I think you mean to say Starfleet protocol there. Z appears and wants to help, believing that taking Adira to the symbiont caves gives their species a fighting chance. I'm not sure how this is the case. I would like to know a detail or two as to why their society is on the brink of collapse. Just telling me isn't good enough. Given the sights we've seen of Trill so far, it looks to be a pretty pleasant place. I don't see anything that would support such a claim, and if that is the case for the story, then the production really dropped the ball here because Trill should appear to be suffering rather than prospering. Looking at this speculatively, what would Adira's successful joining with the symbiont do for the Trills? I suspect the goal is to open up symbionts to other species so that they may live in host bodies, but that raises questions as to why that is important anyways. My understanding was that the Trills and the symbionts being joined was more of a status among their culture as opposed to a mutual dependency. Did the burn kill Trills hosting symbionts? Did those symbionts manage to survive and somehow return to the caves of Makala, or did they die with their hosts? If those symbionts somehow survived and there's countless generations of knowledge and experience preserved in them that the Trill culture is dependent on, but not enough of the population to host them, then I could see a Trill problem and an obstacle to their prosperity. It would also further support the argument this episode is making about not discriminating against other species from hosting symbionts, as well as an argument for the Trill and symbiont being the only way as it is the norm. But here I'm just seeing a bunch of potentially good but poorly formed ideas rattling around in an attempt to make drama through ambiguity instead of a single specific idea that can open up this world to the audience. All I know for sure from these scenes is that Trill has a problem with being able to host symbionts. Adira can't remember who she is or communicate properly with her symbiont, and that Z is going against his fellow authoritative figures to help her. These are fine actions, but they're missing a defined motivation. Are the symbionts dying because there aren't any hosts? Have the Trills developed a genetic anomaly from the burn like the Aldeans did in When the Bow Breaks, where they can't have children? Here, the Trill can no longer survive joining with the symbionts. All we know for sure is that there are not enough viable hosts, but we need to know why they are needed in the first place. It's the same problem Saru is facing on Discovery, with his crew feeling alone and disconnected, but we're not informed why that is the case aside from a jump in time, but a lack of actual consequences regarding that jump. He consults the computer for options, and the responses are quite, well, debatable.
Yoga, hyperbaric chamber, therapeutic coloring books, interstellar shopping.
Saru is looking for something more substantive, and the sphere data stored in the computer appears to upgrade it with a personality with various different accents. It suggests the old silent comedies of the early 20th century such as Buster Keaton and Charlie Chaplin. In addition, it suggests activating the automation systems to allow the crew to take a night off, as well as showing gratitude and private dining. Essentially, the computer is suggesting Saru take the crew out for dinner and a movie, basically the type of date one suggests when either they have never been on a date or have just run out of ideas. This lack of ideas is further proven when the entire context of this dinner scene is to repeat information anyone who has been watching thus far already knows. They dwell on their decision to come to the future and eat up time by having each crew member repeat the vote they cast to join Michael in the 32nd century.
Must we really?
Yes, we must.
No, actually, you don't have to. We know this information. This should be a scene about reconciliation with what they have learned about the galaxy, about their planet, about their families and friends. This could be a character-defining moment with something new. Instead, we get nonsensical haikus around the dinner table with Detmer remarking on Stamets' blood, then getting in a fight with him about who pilots the ship and saves the crew. All they're missing is someone to mention who they voted for in the last election, and we've got ourselves a typical Thanksgiving Day argument. Back on Trill, Adira and Burnham are taken to the caves where Adira hops into the symbiont gene pool. It is Z's hope that the pool will allow Adira and her symbiont to establish communication and complete the joining process. Z speculates that her memory block may have to do with some type of emotional encounter or trauma that's preventing them from a proper joining. This is an interesting set piece, and I like how Burnham's questions draw on Z's expertise of the symbionts to help identify Adira's problem. When it looks like Adira's life is in danger while in the pool, the other council people show up armed wanting to stop the procedure. Z argues that this girl is all they have, and Burnham argues that Adira is trying to save the Trill's lives. But from what? The show told us there's a stake, but not what the stake exactly is. If we don't know what is at stake and why, then we can't be drawn into the drama that is displayed before us. Adira is pulled beneath the water and vanishes. Burnham is allowed into the pool to rescue Adira. The Trill aid her with neural stabilizers, outlining that she has limited time to succeed, but not given an actual ticking clock, and she too gets pulled to the bottom. But why is Burnham going in? Shouldn't Z be the one doing that as he is the symbiont expert? Why would a human have more success at Trill-symbiont relations than a symbiont expert from Trill? It's too convoluted. It's a flaw with the writers by putting Burnham in the position to solve the problem when by all accounts she's not supposed to be equipped to do so. When you put her in every situation to be the victor, it ends up making her boring. She's never in a helpless position, never unable to fail. When there's no risk, there's no thrill, and thus no entertainment. Just another and many missed opportunities here. It would have been better for Z to go in, and Burnham stuck having to protect them both when the eventual ambush arrives. But we can't have Burnham not be on the front lines, so down into the water she goes. Burnham finds herself in some type of avatar forest, changed from blue to orange and red to avoid copyright infringement, and finds Adira who is desperate to escape. While in this strange place, Burnham determines that these thousands of threads are trying to connect with Adira, and she surmises that if Adira allows it, it will let them return to the surface. The threads connect and she starts to relive memories about a character named Gray.
He was my boyfriend.
Oh, you poor, silly young child. This show has asked a lot of me and its audience. It has asked that I believe in sonar in space, shooting stars that can be seen in space from space, and instantaneous travel through mushrooms. But to ask the world to believe that these two characters are in love and are involved in a romantic relationship requires an invention of a new word that goes beyond ludicrous, that goes beyond hyper-ludicrous. You take these two, put them together in any place at any time, the population is going to observe and at best remark, yeah, she's his beard. She relives memories with Gray. No disrespect to the actors individually, they just don't have any chemistry on screen, or at least not in the footage that made it to the final cut. There is a moment in the flashback where the two kiss. Well, it's not really a kiss. It's two people flattening their lips and kind of putting them against each other and someone throwing in that sound of a smooch. Typically, when people are in love, the kisses have a bit more passion. I've been a teenager in love. Kissing was awkward then, but nowhere near as awkward as that. And these are adults playing teenagers that are full of hormones and emotions, so we should see them kissing as if they have those hormones and emotions. And I prefer that is as much of it we see of their romance or any teenage romance. Even Adira is running away from this, not because it's unbelievable, but because something inside her is trying to protect her from some pain. And no, it's not Gray coming out. Burnham grabs hold of Adira and encourages her to face whatever lies ahead, otherwise she'll never grow. A very good lesson, one I have to keep telling myself while watching this show because I often want to turn away. Adira pushes forward and we learn that shortly after Gray gets the symbiont, their ship has an accident, getting struck by an asteroid, and Gray is severely injured. A medical drone finds the two, and because Gray is going to die, Adira volunteers to become a host for the symbiont so it can live on. After remembering and accepting the tragedy, Adira unlocks her connection to the symbiont and all their past hosts. They return to the surface where Adira remembers her past names, proving to the rest of the Trills that the symbiont accepted her. As a result, the rest of the Trills accept Adira, and they offer to mentor her on her new path. However, Adira is going to stick with Discovery for now. So here is our ending of Adira's story, as it were. She successfully joins with the symbiont and is accepted by the Trill, and somehow this act saves their society. How? What has really changed for Trill? So other species can join with the symbionts. Okay. And that means what exactly? I'm at a loss. We're told there's a conflict with Trill, but not exactly what it is. Z thinks Adira communicating with her symbiont will save them, so when she achieves that and leaves the planet, has anything really changed? To me, I'd argue nothing has changed. It's not like we were shown thousands of people from other species protesting outside of Trill, demanding that they be joined with symbionts. So we get introduced to this entire subplot about a problem on Trill with no context as to what that problem is, just to inject a pseudo-obstacle with Adira connecting her with the symbiont. The episode didn't need the issue of Trill in peril, but having an obstacle of a Trill councilman offended by a human host is good enough. It's the simple conflict of bias. Trill could be and should have been fine. The conflict should come from Voss thinking that a non-Trill host can't properly utilize a symbiont, and Adira's lack of memory or access to the symbiont's memories proves his point. It's when Z helps Adira overcome that obstacle that Voss is proven wrong, and that perhaps the relationship between symbiont and host is more on trust than genetics. Instead, we get told a few times of this absent situation of Trill society on the brink, and it's so convoluted that we don't even know what the heck type of brink it's approaching. Well, now that their story is done, Burnham and Adira return to the ship where Saru gets affirmation from Tilly about embodying leadership. Stamets shows up to apologize for his behavior because the script says so. We don't know how he came to this conclusion. The writers perhaps realized that they're 47 minutes into the episode and they forgot to expand and resolve this conflict between the two, so they threw it in here. They do the same with Detmer having her show up at sickbay to take Culber up on talking out her issues, which won't be happening now. They're going to save that for another time, and instead head over to the shuttle bay where Saru is showing a Buster Keaton film to the crew. They're laughing and enjoying the entertainment, which is something you don't see happening from Discovery for the intended reasons. The episode concludes with Adira giving Burnham the coordinates to Federation headquarters, and we find that Gray appears to Adira like a Force Ghost or Al from Quantum Leap for some reason.
Oh boy.
What are the odds that the writers will give Gray the ability to learn things outside of Adira's perspective and communicate that information back to her like some type of extra-dimensional spy? I hope I am wrong with that prediction, but I've learned pretty quick that whenever you think Secret Hideout can't do anything dumber, they respond with, "Hold my decaf soy latte." If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have anything to add to this episode, please leave a comment below. Thank you for watching, and never forget, it all starts with the script.